my paper is titled Some Institutional Design for Shareholder Socialism. In this paper, I develop some novel institutional arrangements for market socialism. Market socialism is an alternative economic system in which all large-scale firms are in public ownership and characterized by co-determination by their workers. Differently from the current system, in market socialism, the profits of large firms do not accrue to a minority of super rich, but to the public budget that can use those profits to finance a social dividend. And by the same token, in such a system, there is no capitalist class that, thanks to its control over the largest economic units of society, can exert an immense influence on political decision-making, thereby contaminating democracy with the germs of plutocracy. So this is why market socialism appears to be a very promising path of social progress, but it is also characterized by some worries, by some pitfalls. There are three main pitfalls with market socialism. The first one is the one of chronism. It is to say, the government interfering with the management of the public firms, leading to management being deresponsabilized, firms having a soft budget constraints, and being operated in an inefficient way. The second pitfall concerns the lack of technological dynamism. It is to say, in such a system, private entrepreneurs are allowed to run small and medium-sized firms, but fearing that being successful would lead their firms to be nationalized, they may refrain from innovating, which would lead to technological stagnation under market socialism. The third pitfall is the one of power concentration in the hand of the government. As compared to the current state of affairs, the government under market socialism would have the additional power that derives from the control of all largest firms in the economy. This means that an incompetent or opportunistic government could generate a damage that is much larger than the one that is created by opportunistic, incompetent governments under capitalism. In my paper, I offer three institutional responses to those three pitfalls. So with respect to the worry about chronism, I propose a systematic use of the stock market and of a politically independent public agency in order to arrive at an efficient and democratically legitimate management of large public firms. With respect to the second pitfall, that is to say technological stagnation, I suggest an incentive-compatible mechanism of takeovers of successful private firms that maintain the incentives for entrepreneurs to invest. And with respect to the problem of power concentration, I suggest a bundle of measures for a truly participatory democracy. So this is what the paper is about. The economic rationale of market socialism has become more compelling because of two fundamental developments: the substantial decline of the labor share and the inability of the social democratic approach to preserve social cohesion, let alone achieve novel emancipatory goals. The limited scope of egalitarian wage growth today and redistributive taxation suggest that the distribution of primary incomes from capital should be made more equal. And this is possible as soon as a sufficiently large fraction of the capital stock is in public ownership. because the corresponding capital returns can then be equally distributed to the population via the public budget by means of a social dividend. That is to say, those two major structural developments lend a novel relevance to the vision of market socialism, to a blueprint for an economy that can credibly compete against the two alternatives that at the moment seem to be those that will dominate the near future. That is to say, on the one hand, the Anglo-Saxon neoliberal version of capitalism, and on the other hand, the Chinese version of authoritarian capitalism. So I think that it is very important to identify credible and solid solutions for the problems of market socialism in order to have a path of social progress that is desirable and credible as compared to those two existing versions of capitalism. With respect to further research, there is a need for refinement and extension of all the three proposals that I've made in the paper. That is to say, with respect to the use of the stock market by a politically independent public agency in charge of the control of large public firms, with respect to the development of the mechanism of mandatory auctions that I have proposed in order to solve the incentive problem for private entrepreneurs under market socialism, and also with respect to the mix of representative and direct democracy that I have proposed in order to mitigate the issue of increased power concentration. However, I think that there are also policy implications that come out from this work. That is the idea that market socialism cannot be attained at once, but should be pursued by an evolutionary approach. And I think that the first step in this approach should be the creation of an ethical sovereign wealth fund that may invest in the worldwide stock market, but without achieving control of companies, and whose net returns are distributed to the population by means of a social dividend. And since this would also be a politically independent public agency in charge of the management of public wealth, this would be a first step for the polity in order to learn how to deal with the public ownership of the means of production. This would be easier than the management of public corporations. It would be a first step in which the polity can achieve both the ability to manage public wealth and the confidence in its ability. And these would be then the necessary ingredients in order to embark on the more ambitious project of market socialism. So that I think that this approach has also implications for concrete economic policy.